Hi, everyone. I am so excited to have you this evening. My name is Laura Paul. I'm the Student Athlete Success Director at Jackson Hole Ski and Snowboard Club. And we are very honored to host again, returning Jessie McTeague from JMAC Academic and College Consulting. She is based in Colorado and just has a huge heart for all things skiing, plus the added knowledge of what it takes to get into some of these NCAA programs. And she can talk a little bit about USCSA. And we are so excited to have her. Thank you so much, Jessie, for coming back and sharing your knowledge with our families and your expertise.
Awesome. Hi, everyone. It's not a huge group, so I kind of have something planned. I'll go through, but please, if the chat's open, put some questions in the chat, and I can go off plan. I really want this to be as helpful for you as possible. So let me just get into my present mode. Okay. So just about me, super quick. I have two kids. One is a racer and is PGing at Burke right now, and the other was a racer and went Big Mountain. And we were just chatting kind of about the cool Big Mountain college scene that's emerging, which could be another talk. I worked in schools since I was 22, pretty much, and did everything from coaching to teaching English and history from every level from 7th to 12th grade, as well as doing college counseling. I actually went to Burke and skied for Dartmouth, and then also did some grad work at Penn, and have just been in education and in the ski world and outdoor world for as long as I can remember. Just a quick shout out to professionalism. If you do work with, I'm called an independent educational consultant. I really encourage you to ask if they're a part of any professional organizations. This is a profession with a code of ethics, and there's a lot of professional development opportunities. These organizations connect you to a huge group of colleagues, have requirements that you're visiting schools and staying current. So everyone went to college. A lot of people went to college, so everyone thinks they're an expert. I get a lot of my high school roommate's sister's friend told me, and I'm like, oh. So there is professional organizations. If you do work with anyone privately in this manner, I would ask them, like, what are your professional organizations that you're a part of? So in general, more kids who are in ski clubs are likely not going to probably ski NCAA than are. So I wanted to kind of start with some college counseling 101 that is applicable to all kids, skiers and non-skiers, just to get kind of versed in this whole college application selection world. So the first thing a lot of people want to know is, what are colleges looking for? And so I'm gathering any content. I really like Jeffrey Salingo and Who Gets In and Why. I talk to a lot of admissions reps. I go to conferences, experts in the field who were former admissions reps. So it's kind of a summary of the different sources that I use. So the first thing is they want to see academic rigor from students. So when a college looks at a student who's applying, they first ask, can this student thrive in the curriculum we offer? So clearly that's going to be different at Montana State than at CU Boulder, than at Middlebury or Dartmouth or any school. Will the student do well here? And they're evaluating the student within the context of the high school that they went to and what that high school offered. So if they went to a high school where there were no APs, they're not going to penalize a student for not taking APs. If they went to a high school where there were a lot of APs and 70% of the students took at least one or two APs, then they're going to expect that students from that school took a few APs. So they're judging the academic rigor within the context of the high school environment that the school went to. So I know that there are different high schools in Jackson Hole. So the public school is going to be evaluated on rigor differently than the private schools, depending on what they offer. They want to see engagement in extracurriculars and community. So obviously skiing checks this box in a big way. They want to see depth over breadth. So they want to see genuine, authentic, long-term engagement versus a smattering of then involvement. So with skiers, because when they get to the junior senior year, it is so time consuming. I definitely just really encourage skiers and parents to keep those threads and keep those through lines of things they're doing that aren't skiing, and whether that's volunteering with the club or in the community, and not doing this to get into college, but doing something that you love, and continuing it through junior and senior year, through high school, and not having to quit everything because of the time demands of skiing. And then they want to see evidence of intellectual curiosity. Again, skiers, their time is so limited because of the time of skiing. But I always tell students, I always say to them, I say, if you ever have a choice project in school, like you can do a research project on anything, or a senior project or a junior project, I always say, think really carefully, like don't waste that opportunity to just to choose anything. Choose something you're genuinely interested in. And there's so many overlaps of skiing with recovery and physiology and anatomy and sports psychology, film and blogging and writing, and all of these things that are connected. If it's connected, if it's not, that's awesome too. But sometimes, because skiers are so tight, because of what it takes to ski, that they lose evidence of intellectual curiosity. So I just encourage kids to think about that and see what they can do to show evidence of their intellectual curiosity. And then they want to see leadership and character. Obviously, so much character comes out of skiing. We say we measure grit in gallons with skiers. But any sort of leadership opportunities, I really encourage kids to take advantage of within their schools, within their clubs, and that colleges care. So I think this is really important for parents to understand, is when students apply to college, there's two different buckets. There's qualification. Is this student qualified? And then of all of the students that are qualified, they select a class. So let's just take Dartmouth. It's easy. 1,000 freshmen. Let's say it's a 50% yield. So half the kids you accept are going to accept you. So to fit 1,000 seats, they have to accept 2,000 kids, but 20,000 kids are applying. And of those 20,000 kids, 8,000 of those 20,000 kids are completely equally academically qualified to go to Dartmouth. So now they have to pick 2,000 equally qualified kids from 8,000. So that's where that selection process comes in. So from the qualified candidate pool, the school has to create a class. So that class selection comes from, they don't want kids interested in all the same things, interested in all the same majors. The schools have priorities. If they just built a $220 million performing arts center, they need kids interested in art. If they just launched an Arctic environmental studies program, they need to make sure that they're filling their priorities for a given year. This is a quote from a former admissions officer at Dartmouth. She says, "We need to help our students apply to college rather than compete for college. We need to remember that there's a school for everyone, and not everyone needs to attend any one school. We need to appreciate the path to the college gate, and we must remind ourselves that admission decisions are not value statements. They're just business." And I think that last piece is what students and parents don't understand, that the college admissions is a business, which does not, especially competitive college admissions for highly selective schools, that does not benefit the student, but benefits the college. So it's just when students are developing college lists, we were talking earlier, Laura and I, just how important it is to have a list of schools with a diversity of selectivity. This, I'm not going to go through this. This is just the process I do with students throughout their junior and senior year. A lot of logistics and reflection in their junior year to identify criteria. A lot of time on the college list and research, which often gets shortened, but is a really important process to develop a list with diverse selectivity that hits all the students' criteria. Then what I'm in deep right now is the application process with the seniors I'm working with. I really like students to have their essay done before the end of summer, especially for early action and early decision type stuff. And then there's some post-app and financial aid stuff that I help students with. But this again goes back to that college list. And if the college list is a funnel, we want to start with a wide group of schools and narrow it to the school that kids will apply to versus, you know, pointing to the blue ring and saying, I want to go to that school. And if I don't get in, my whole process has failed. And now I got to backtrack and figure out what I'm doing. We just really want to start with kids and letting them know kind of all of the schools available to them. I don't think a lot of people know this because we seem to focus on the schools with less than 10% selectivity, but most colleges actually accept most students. There are approximately 1,400 four-year colleges in the US. Out of those, only 200 accept fewer than 50% of applicants. The average acceptance rate of the other 1,200 is 65%. The students I work with who aren't ski racers, I have had kids get into every school they apply to because they know themselves so well and they're applying to schools that are a good match for them. I do encourage kids to go for, you know, stretch schools, and, you know, sometimes they get in, sometimes not, but there are kids that just really take this process and are very realistic about it, and they end up getting into every school they apply to. Okay, so that's like my non-skier college counseling. But all of that, a lot of that becomes challenging with skiers. And the reason is because there's only 20 schools in the nation that have Alpine ski teams, and then a handful more that have Nordic ski teams, NCAA. If kids are willing to look at USCSA schools, which I will show you, the world opens. So when you look at, you know, all the beautiful stuff about looking at all these colleges and starting at the top of the funnel, if skiing NCAA is a criteria, you literally have 20 schools to choose from, 13 in the East, 7 in the West. Of those, we can just look at this real quick: Boston, Dartmouth, Harvard, Bates, Colby, Middlebury, Williams. Of those 13, 7, I think all of those schools have a less than 10% admit rate, some 6. And then schools that you might not be interested in at all. So it just, with skiers, the whole college match thing becomes a little bit more challenging, and they're limited in the schools that are available with that criteria. With that being said, skiers who are recruited have a big advantage in that selectivity, Ben, that we talked about a few slides ago. When it comes to that selectivity, you know, they get the selectivity card, especially if they have a coach's poll where a coach identifies a student as someone that they're recruiting. Then that can be the defining factor of admittance to some of these highly selective schools. So it's really interesting because the East Coast has way more variety of schools. The West Coast NCAA schools are bigger schools, more generous, very generous acceptance rates, but much more competitive teams. Montana State, Boulder, the national champions from last year. Denver 3rd at those national champions, Utah 2nd at those national championships, or I think Dartmouth was in there. Dartmouth might have been 4th. University of Nevada, Reno, they historically had a really strong Alpine team. wasn't funded from some years, came back in 22, 23. University of Alaska Anchorage, Westminster, and then Colorado Mountain College. This is interesting. They are a community college, in the campus is in Steamboat. And what they're doing, because PG years, as I'll show you through some data in a few minutes, are so commonplace and almost required, they're allowing kids to go to Colorado Mountain College, because when you do go to these college programs, all of your ski racing is paid for. So as a parent, like, that is an awesome thing that your ski racing is paid for. So students have been using the Colorado Mountain College to PG for free. You have to pay tuition, but it's pretty low there. And then building their point profile and their skier profile to then transfer to a more competitive school. So a PG from Colorado Mountain College just transferred to the DU team as a junior. So there are some creative options to help kids fill the gap between finishing high school and be ready to ski NCAA. Here, so these teams I showed you, they all have Nordic teams as well, except the ones that say Alpine only. And then these are schools that have Nordic teams, but not Alpine teams. So there's actually more schools with NCAA Nordic teams, because there's the whole Central Collegiate Ski Association. For a team to win the NCAA championships, they must have a men's and women's Nordic team and a men's and women Alpine team, because the NCAA championships are combined of all four of those teams, which is really kind of cool, but makes it hard for all the schools to compete. Okay, so back to like the typical college timeline. I generally start working with kids like at the end of their sophomore, spring, junior, fall. I want to see the classes they're taking. I want to know if they've taken the PSAT and MSQT. Highly selective schools are bringing the SAT back of the NCAA ski schools. Harvard and Dartmouth do require SAT scores, even for recruited skiers. You can't get out of it. So just kind of looking at a standardized test plan, there are a ton of schools that are still test optional, but a good test score never hurts you. And every year, colleges are more colleges are starting to require SAT scores. We work on identifying college criteria. We work on doing a lot of reflection for the students to identify aligned interests, and developing the college list. In the junior spring, usually during junior spring break, which does not work for skiers because they are racing, parents will go visit schools so that by the end of the junior spring, they have a sense of maybe where they're going to apply to. And then we'll make a summer plan. And if they still need to continue to take standardized tests in the fall, they can take them. A lot of juniors who are super motivated and on it will have the score they want by the end of their spring. And then a lot of my senior fall is working with kids and finishing their apps. Okay, this timeline gets blown up with skiers, who I have a lot of and love dearly, and my daughter is one, because of the nasty NCAA age exception. This age exception only applies to men's ice hockey and men's and women's skiing. So what it does is it gives eligibility for D1 ski schools until a student's 21st birthday. D2, they have 3 years of a grace period until their eligibility clock starts. And I believe D3 is the same as D1. But I need to check that. There is a huge grace period for all three. Skiing, NCAA skiing includes D1, D2, D3 schools. Each school just has its own regulations under NCAA regarding contact hours with coach and giving money. But in skiing, they all ski against each other. So what this does is it allows students to be eligible to ski until they're 25 years old. So it makes it exceedingly difficult for an 18-year-old graduating from high school to get a spot on a team, on any team really, and especially a competitive team. You are now competing against a 25-year-old, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23, 24, 25-year-old for a spot on a team. And that those adults have, 5, 6 more years in the weight room of growth and of skiing. This I do not see this affecting the Nordic rosters as much as the Alpine rosters. And I don't know if there's any Nordic parents that can kind of speak to it, but from looking at the rosters of Nordic teams, there seem to be more like 2006s and 2005s as freshmen and sophomores versus 2002s and 2003 birth year, which is the trend more at the Alpine teams. So this is just to show you that like tennis, the tennis world is complaining, that all these Euros are taking all the spots in college. However, whether you're European or American, you have 6 months after you graduate high school as a grace period to where your eligibility. So you're like an 18-year-old is competing against 18-year-olds for the spots. Kids do go play juniors, but you don't have to, because at 21 and a half, you're no longer eligible. Neither is anybody else. All other sports is a year. So again, anyone can go take a year off to build up to get recruited, but you're going to lose eligibility the more years you take off. Unfortunately, that is not the case in skiing. And that is why we have this dilemma with kids having to PG until they're 20, for men, in some cases 21, to get a spot on a competitive NCAA team. This is from Peter Dodge, kind of legendary coach. Him and Richard Rokos were kind of the longest standing college coaches for a long time. They both have retired. Many would like to see the exception eliminated, with the eligibility clock starting 1 year after high school graduation, as in most other NCAA sports, and take younger skiers. However, given the rules and to be competitive, it is more advantageous to take more mature athletes who have taken 1 or 2 PG years. So the coaches are just victim to the game. They have to take the older athletes to be competitive. So that just blows up that beautiful, great timeline I just showed you, where kids are, into college at, in December of their senior year, and then they know where they're going to go. So the red is kind of the NCAA age exception, is that most student athletes, if you're not old for your grade, most student athletes are first year FIS racers in their junior years. So they're second year U18, second year FIS in their senior year. Unfortunately, to apply and go to school, to apply in your senior fall, that means you're talking to coaches your junior spring after 1 year of FIS. Of the, I don't know, I think I went through 8 college rosters and looked at the birth year. There are 2 women that were able to do that, and nobody else on any other roster that I looked at is able to do that. It's just very difficult after 1 year of FIS to be in a position to be talking to college coaches as recruits. So what happens is they're talking to college coaches in their senior spring, but which is too late for them to start school in the fall after they graduate. So they usually need 2 years of FIS, maybe even 3, before a college coach can really know to the extent they're going to be competitive on their team. So it just makes it messy and kind of the unknown. It's a little, parents get a little nervous, rightly so, because it is more common for skiers to get recruited in the spring of their senior year or the fall of their PG year, which is fine as long as you're okay with your kid not knowing where they're going at the end of their senior year. There is a caveat to that. So NESCAC schools, which are Colby, Bates, Williams, Middlebury, they have to abide by the application deadlines, as does Dartmouth, Harvard, those schools. But a school like DU, and this actually happened with an athlete, spring series in April, a senior in high school can be skiing really fast, turning it on, and a school like DU or I think UNH can do this as well, UVM, some of those schools, they can say, hey, do you want to ski for us at that late date? And they can skirt the admission deadlines and get those students in to start the next fall. That doesn't happen often, but it can happen, but not to those highly selective schools. They cannot skirt the deadline. So this is just a long-winded way of saying the deadlines for skiing recruiting, given this age situation, do not align with the traditional college application process of knowing where you're going senior year. Does anyone have any, like, that's like a lot. I'm just going to show some data just to show you that I'm not making this stuff up. Does anyone have any questions so far? You want me to just keep plugging along?
I,
Okay.
I had a quick question, Jesse. Actually, I had a few questions that maybe you could answer. Do you know what the reason is for the NCAA exception for skiing?
Um, it's hockey too. I don't. I've been asked that question. I think I might have even researched it. I don't, and I know like no, like everybody wants it to go away. So I don't, I'm not, there are like you guys, the club people, like there are like the USSS, when they do their conferences in the spring and fall, they have a college committee, so like there's conversations and there's organizations that I am not privy to, amongst NCAA skiing. This conversation has been going since since I raced. I mean, this is
Right.
not a new conversation. I don't know how to get it changed. I talked to Edie Tees Morgan about it. She's done a lot of work with kind of similar spreadsheets, and she's got a platform on Ski Racing Media. But for whatever reason, it's yeah. I mean, if everyone just revolted, I mean, I would love to see it changed. I personally don't know how to get it changed. I know that people in the world that have influence want it changed. And I don't know like the intricacies of the NCAA well enough.
Okay. And my other question is, for kids who want to ski, can you apply to school and defer more than 1 year to
It's
build
a
up your points?
Okay, that is a great question. Yeah, so you can also break a deferral. So early decision, okay, this gets tricky. So early decision, you are obligated to go. If you get an ED, you are obligated to go. There is no legal agreement. Like they can't arrest you. I mean, like they're not going to blackball you from another college. Like people do break ED decisions. You should have an extenuating circumstance to do it. You should never go into an ED being like, well, if it doesn't work out, I'm going to break it. But it is not like, it's just kind of in good faith and you do sign something, but it doesn't have a lot of legal teeth to it. So kids, and I'll show you, I have a slide on kind of these options of like, how do kids reach these challenges? And there are stories of, coaches pulling for kids. And then another kid who had deferred was going to defer to 2 year comes, and all of a sudden that kid that went ED to that school doesn't have a spot. I mean, that's pretty rare, or a kid just applying to a school, getting in on their own. Sometimes that works out, and then that makes it easy on the coach because they don't need to use a pull for you. And if there's a spot that you fit, they may give it to you. But it has worked out for kids that have taken that gamble and they've gotten in on their own and there was no spot. My thing to kids is go to the school that you would go, that you're psyched to go to. And if you're going to Dartmouth, Middlebury, Colby, any of these schools, it's a win, right? So like there is some of that stuff going on. Now for the defer, I always want students to apply, get into schools, and then they can defer. I did like call schools to confirm what I'm about to say, because my daughter is in this position where she got into school where she would be happy. She deferred, so she has a spot and she has a school she can go to, but she is taking a PG year and is just curious if there might be different possibilities than that were available to her at this time last year. And I called the school and I said, can you break a deferral? Like, how is that frowned upon? And they were, so you do put a deposit, in the context of the cost of ski racing and the cost of college, it's pretty minimal. I think ours was like maybe $250. I think the max is like 500. But they said, these are 18-year-old kids, they're taking a year off. We expect that things will change. So kids can break deferral and they can reapply to schools while they are deferring. So there is a student that I worked with who did not get a coach's poll for a school that he wanted to go to, applied to CU Boulder, knowing that he probably could not ski for them, but would be very happy as a student there, is going to take a year off because he wants to take a year off. And if there wasn't an opportunity at a school he was excited to ski at, he would hang it up, go to CU, have a great college life. And he is now, so he's deferred from CU and now he's getting some love from a coach of a school on the East Coast that he wants to ski at. So he can reapply to that school, break his deferral from CU, and everything's fine.
Thank you. Thank you for that.
Yeah. Yeah. And those, and that's where it gets tricky, right? That's where it gets really tricky. They don't want you to defer from more than one school. That's a no-no. But people do what people are going to do. So this is one. So basically, I'll send a link to this. I'm not going to go over all of this, but this is just like how do I know what schools I can ski for, or how do I know what to aim for? So these are the roster lists of multiple schools on the East Coast and West Coast. The current rosters, their birth year. So if you were a second year U18 as a senior and you went right to college, you would be a 2006. So this girl right here is the anomaly. There's only 2 2006s on this entire list. And you'll notice there are very few 2005s. And the reason is because if you were a first year U21 as a senior, you were a 2005. So most of the 2005s and 2006s that want to get recruited, are in the pipeline to get recruited, are currently PGing. There are very few. So a 2006 means you went from a senior in high school and skied for a college as a first year U21. So there are very few 2006s and 2005s on this list, and you can count the years, which just shows you can go through this to whatever extent you want and see how many years kids are taking off to ski in college. Again, I don't know. I don't know the month of all these kids' birthdays. So if you are a 2005, it is possible that you were just an older senior and you went right to college. If you are a 2004, it is possible that you were an older senior and took 1 year off. However, it's also possible that you were a young senior and took 2 years off. So I can't speak to like exactly how many years off. I can only speak to how many years after second year U18 some of these students are. So this gives like the point range of the students. It gives the school, and it gives their birth year. And so again, this guide right here is a 2006 freshman, went right after senior year, a 2005 sophomore, 2004 junior, 2003 senior. So aberrations to that pattern shows being old as a senior and or taking years off or multiple years off. So these ski teams, so Bates, some great, you got some 37, 46, you also have some 91. Some of these aberrations are kids that were injured because your points go up. So there's a bigger range of points at a school like Bates, Boston College, way bigger roster lists. Right here, you see these the GR is grad students. This is interesting because one of these students finished at Bates, skied for Bates for 4 years, and then is going to Boston College for some grad program. So has it somehow they have a year of eligibility left. Maybe they didn't ski all 4 years. Maybe they got hurt. Maybe there was a COVID. Maybe they're still part of the COVID bubble. So 2 of these students, one graduate from Middlebury, one graduate from Bates, skied for them, had a year left, and can now go to Boston College and ski as a graduate student. Colby is pretty hot right now. Just amongst skiers and non-skiers, ton of money going into that school, really adamant and aggressive about being able to compete with Dartmouth and Middlebury. They did not publish their 2025 roster. I just know these two girls they were the recruits. I don't know the male recruits here. But you can see starting to get pretty competitive, points in the 40s, 35, maybe not as consistent across the disciplines as you'll see with the Dartmouth team. Boys coming in 34 and 40, 44 and 27. On the older side, again, 2002, 2001s. Again, kids have to decide, do I want to be a 20-year-old, freshman at a small liberal arts school, at a school like CU Boulder or Utah? It's probably not as big of a deal because there's a way bigger, way more diverse student body. The small liberal arts schools, it's you and the hockey players that there are, like, all the hockey players are 20 and 21 too. So again, here's Dartmouth, freshman 2005. I know this girl was an old senior. She went as a senior in high school right to Dartmouth, got the ED2 bid, so kind of had to sweat a little bit until the December results, and then was able to get in. But she was an old senior, so she did go right after high school as well, but is not a 2006. This name, I mean, I think this girl was on the Canadian team. She's been on the US team skiing in Austria. I mean, this list is ridiculous. Like the Bococks, the Resnicks, Zoe Zimmerman, like this is US ski team, former US ski team. A lot of these guys, JP Dagnol is the coach. He's French Canadian. A lot of Canadians and foreigners, which is not as common for Dartmouth, but is now. You're looking at 25, 23, 31 points, 2002. So, multiple years off to get a spot on these teams. Middlebury looks a little bit like Dartmouth. St. Lawrence looks a little bit more like Boston College. Interesting another grad program. I don't know if all of these skiers are active. I don't know how updated the rosters were because it's still pretty early. But a lot more leniency in competitiveness at St. Lawrence. UNH you're getting back down to the 20s and 30s. Again, multiple years off. Although in 2004, you could have been an old senior 1 year off and gotten that spot. So that's not, crazy. This is a 2005, so that's, kind of right on 1 year off. Dasha was she was on the US ski team forever, is now going to college. You're going to see more of that. So just again, I'll send this to you to look at, but it just is a great reference. I don't have this for Nordic skiers. I apologize to Nordic parents. I'm building for Nordic. I don't have a lot of Nordic clients right now. I have a lot of Alpine clients. So Montana State is super competitive. The girls are older. This is really interesting. So I didn't know this, and I actually watched CU races, was at CU races, or races CU is at this year. But they won the national championship, and on their roster last year when they won, Emma, Caroline, Denise, and Julia, all four of these girls were grad students. So they're probably 24, they're probably right at that edge of eligibility. So these schools are leveraging those older athletes to win national championships. So again, you can be the best 18-year-old in the nation, and it's going to be really hard against a 25-year-old, 24-year-old, former World Cup European skier. This is one of the 2006s. There's one, and it's DU. She has won, U18 national championships and scored top 30 in NORAMs consistently, and does have goals for World Cup. So, it does happen, but it's not the norm. And then you can see the boys. So that's just to show, I just think it's, fair for parents and students, when they kind of make their map, which I kind of encourage kids to kind of make a map that, you have to account for, I think, you need to account for a PG year. And that, that has a lot of there's a lot to a PG year, financially, and just where you're going to go and what's this going to look like and what does our applications look like and communicate with coaches and that sort of thing. A lot of club coaches are amazing at helping athletes with this. I always tell kids, make sure you're communicating with your club coaches. They're connected. They are a great resource for the PG year and for the communication with coaches for the reality. Just love you, parents. I'm one, but sometimes we don't like to hear the reality. Like, they're not dream wreckers. They're just like trying to help students make good decisions. I showed this last year. This is from 2023, 2024. This is just how many spots. This was last year's rosters, high and low points for a handful of schools. And then how many of those spots were US. This Dartmouth men's would change drastically, I think, with this roster. But you could see, like, Utah, there was 1 of 8 on last year's roster that was American, 2 of 7 for men. University of Denver actually has a lot more American women. Both of the recruits are American, but last year was 3 of 7, 3 of 5. So not only are you competing against, older athletes, but you're competing against international athletes. You'll see a lot of actually Canadians more so than Euros, but you will see Norwegians. You'll hear them talking Norwegian. You'll see the Norwegian hats like when you go to the races. So anyway, takeaways. Basically, just from the schools I showed you, there are more schools than those. Bates will look more like BC. Williams, Williams doesn't look like Colby anymore. It used to, but Colby's kind of upped its game. UVM will look like UNH. CU Boulder will look like DU. Middlebury looks like Dartmouth. If there's like super high points on a competitive team, that might reflect injury. And then some of these big roster numbers, I'm not sure what's going on with those. And that's having that information. And if your athlete is interested in those schools, I would definitely use that and ask the coaches of, like, I noticed that the roster at this school was bigger. Kind of what's the plan over the next few years? I'm jammed. It won't go. Try again. Oh, there we go. Okay. So, Laura, this is a little bit, so what's a kid to do? What's a family to do? Like, this is a tricky situation to navigate. So these are the options that I've seen play out. And obviously, like, get recruited by your dream school for which your skier profile matches the criteria. The coach gives you your coach's poll and you apply ED1 or ED2 in your senior year or your PG year. And you're recruited and you're in, and life is great. That is awesome. That is not, that's only available to a select number of athletes per year. The other thing kids will do is they're like, I really want to ski for Dartmouth or, Middlebury, Colby, fill in the blank. This is more for a selective school because it takes a little bit more strategy. So I do have some data on ED admit rates versus regular decision admit rates. That's not in this slideshow, but in general, whether you're a recruited athlete or not, ED, which are obligatory admit rates, are higher than regular decision rates. So it's a student who's like, I don't have the coach's poll. I think I've got a shot at getting in this school if I apply ED, but I don't know if I'm going to make the team, but I'm going to apply ED. I'm going to get in, I'm going to take a year off, and then I'm going to talk to that coach and hope there's a spot. That has worked out for students and it hasn't worked for students. As far as getting the spot on the team, regardless, they're going to a school that they're excited to go to. Other ones I don't like this option is find a school you can ski for and go all in, even if it doesn't have to be your dream school, but I don't like to see kids compromise so much on the school that they're going to for the skiing, unless they have like huge aspirations and skiing is their thing. Like the girl who went to Colorado Mountain College and then went to DU, she's on the US ski team at one point. If your aspirations are a ski career beyond college, that might be the way to go. But if your aspirations are to ski NCAA college and be an amazing athlete, and that, not make a national team, maybe do, but maybe not, but like not really like your goal to ski World Cup, then I don't like kids compromising that much on the kind of the academic match. The other choice, like enjoy your club racing career, apply to a range of colleges and possibly end up at the beach at the University of Miami, University of San Diego, or MIT. I tell kids like don't PG because to get into an NCAA school, that can be a goal, but PG because you want to PG. PG because that's what you want to do. You have to engage in the process. You can't always control the outcomes. You can control the process. So like it, you just hate for a kid to put something on hold for this singular outcome, and maybe they get hurt. Maybe, that year there isn't a spot, maybe COVID hits, like, who knows? So I just like kids to have lots of options. The coaches say they look beyond the points. They do. I've seen it in a few cases. And they say, they will look at results. It's really hard for kids that aren't consistent to get an NCAA spot, because college racing is all about consistency. If you don't finish, you can't score for your team. So there are situations where kids don't have the points. They were injured. They do, they do have the skiing and they might get in. I think coaches look at points a lot. Kids will send the coaches video. They say they look at potential, I mean, in character, and I think they do for the most part, but everyone knows the kid that got in and maybe wasn't as respectful at the club level as you would have hoped, and they still got in. So, this is what they say they do, and I think they do for the most part, but I think, there's always exceptions for super fast kids, but sometimes there's not too, because there are super fast kids that haven't gotten in to certain schools. And I will say this, like in this process, which seems completely unfair because parents are paying, tens of thousands of dollars. Coaches don't want to hear from parents in the recruiting process, which I would like to talk to coaches about, just because these are huge decisions that these kids are making. And in like football and lacrosse, I think parents are more involved, but there are stories of kids not getting spots because of difficult parents. College coaches, once they're in, they're not going to deal with you except if you show up and like buy them a beer, take the team out to dinner. And they get to choose their athletes. So I, as a parent, I'm kind of like, I want to make sure that this coach is gonna, live up to their word if they're promising my kid a spot. But in general, I coach parents and kids that the kids are sending the emails, they're reading the emails, they're leading the correspondence. When you go visit schools, some coaches will have the parent and the kid and do the whole spiel and show you around. Other coaches will take the kid without the parents and talk to them. So in general, parents are supporting kids, but not directly talking to coaches. Club coaches can talk to college coaches. And anyone on the club side, do you guys have any agree, disagree, heard anything different from that? The club admin people or coaches on this? Okay. So here's some just other factors of choosing schools. Okay. So the USCSA option, this is a lot quicker, I promise. How are we doing on time? I don't have anything in front of me. It's 7:50. Okay. So USCSA, if kids are interested in USCSA, the mission is completely different. Student athletes are really involved in the running of races. NCAA athletes qualify individually. And then if you have a full team, you compete as a team, but USCSA, you qualify for nationals as a team. So if your team qualifies, you get a full team to go, and then individuals whose team don't qualify have an option to go. So it's a completely different vibe, different mission. There are some really competitive varsity teams like Babson, Castleton. I have a list of them. I'll show you. But, there are like varsity teams. They're funded by the schools. There's paid coaches. They have uniforms. They have training. And then there's like student run clubs. So when students are interested in exploring USCSA, I can just show you real quick. I'm going to share this with you guys. This is Um, so these are all the USCSA teams. There's a ton of them. The most competitive are for some reason I can't get this edge here, but these East Coast teams, so Castleton, Clarkson, Babson, UMass, Amherst, UConn, I don't St. Anselm, Brown, and MIT. So this is my thing is not it's I should be in Chrome, but I'm not. I'm in Safari. McConnell, McBride, Reynolds, and Thompson League are the most competitive. So if kids are like, I would look at a USCSA school, that's something that I'm interested in, then all of a sudden the world opens as far as availability of schools, if that's criteria. Some of the schools that have NCAA teams also have USCSA club teams, like you'll see UVM up here, St. Lawrence, UNH. Sometimes some of those bigger rosters, like the St. Lawrence and Boston, I'm curious if that's their kind of club athletes and varsity athletes on one roster, because the club athletes that aren't going to the college races can go to the FISU high level FIS races if they're competitive, and these USCSA races. So when you think about USCSA, the Mid East, so these are the most competitive. Like some of these guys on Castleton and Babson, they've got 40 points. Some of them are Euros. They'll win, the FISU races. This Mid East group, the Colgate has a team. Colgate's kind of hot right now. Syracuse has a team. Hobart Williams Smith has a team. This league isn't as competitive, but there's like a little mountain, half hour from Colgate where kids can where they can train. The other competitive kind of divisions are the Midwest. Someone that won the USCA Nationals was from one of the Michigan schools. And then the Rocky Mountain team, the Air Force team is always pretty strong. CU Boulder also has a club team. It used to be that if your school had a club team and an NCAA team, the club team could not compete in nationals, but I've heard recently they're trying to change that. School of Mines is a technological school in Golden. They've got a strong team. Stanford has a team. Actually, a kid from Telluride races on that team, and he does pretty well. So it's just a lot more options if kids, they can kind of pick how competitive they want to be, or if they're like, I just want to go and have fun ski racing. There are also colleges with ski patrol, so, kids, when they get to the senior year, when they kind of see where they are, how many years they want to take off, what their goals want to be, they can kind of explore this USCSA option and all the schools that might be available to them. Those schools have Nordic teams as well, and some of them even have some of them have snowboarding teams and like the rail thing. So just as a review, like kids should know their options. And I think it's unfair to hide the criteria from kids, like show them the points of the schools, just so they can see, so they're not like disappointed, that they have 50 points and, the Dartmouth coach didn't call them back or whatever, but, the Boston College coach might. Reflect on strengths, weaknesses, interests as athlete and student. I think it's good for students to make goals and a plan. I think it's parents need to give the athlete a fair timeline to achieve that goal. And in this case, that means if you're going to support your kid to ski NCAA, there has to be a lot of consideration on, that gap year and how that's gonna look. I think it's really important for kids to research schools, to understand their ski program, the culture, the criteria. Just because you can ski for Williams, are you going to be happy there? Lots of research on, belonging as the #1 factor of student success. When do you reach out to those college coaches? At what point is your skier profile a fit? When you do reach out to college coaches, they'll ask you to fill out this athlete intent form that they can do a pre-read with admissions, just to kind of see where you kind of fit in with admissions. And then, kids can make a strategy. I have a whole resource page for you guys, with links to like a bunch of articles and all those data sheets that I can share with Laura. But sorry, that was way longer than I thought it was going to be. But are there any questions?
Thank you so much, Jesse. That is like, it is a lot of information. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.